Hello folks, and welcome to another Streaming Live Thursdays. And yes, it's back on a Thursday, which is nice. And just to add to another back, my back is slowly getting better. So yeah, I've decided to bring these back to a Thursday, which makes it easier for me and hopefully easier for you to remember when they are, which is on a Thursday. Hello to all you YouTube people and a hello to the Facebook people. Yes, I'm doing both at the same time, which you're wondering why I'm doing that, because one camera's up there and one camera's down there. So there you go. One of the most important tools that you can use in bow making, well, I'm going to reveal it here for you today, folks, and it's going to be a surprise. It's going to be one of those ones you've never thought of and probably have hundreds of them lying around but can never find one when you actually want one. Yeah, a pencil. Is that a tool? Well, yes, it is. And people tend to forget that they really, really are important. And a lot of the problems that people come to us asking about are problems that they could have corrected if they marked out their bow correctly, or perhaps put some lines on their tiller so they can see the shape of their bow better. So what better tool to talk to you about than the pencil and show you one or two of the things that you can do with a pencil. You can turn it into a little bow and arrow. Let's find that again. Yes, the humble pencil, and yes, the marking out. The bit that's probably the most complex, the most difficult to follow when you've actually got some instructions that you're following from, and probably one of the easiest things to cock up, quite frankly. If you don't get it right, the rest of what you do, the rest of the process, the rest of working on the stave won't come out correctly. Pen is mightier than a sword. Yeah, that's true. It is. It really is. So yeah, so you've got your bow. Here's a bow stave that I'm working on. As I say, my back has slightly improved, so I'm going to have a go at making my first bow in a while. This is a light one, so therefore tillering, which is probably the most difficult bit, and bracing bows, which has been almost impossible for me, I may actually be able to do with this one. Now I've already got the handle section done, the dip section, and the sections at the ends. They've all been marked out and cut out. Now you may think, right, well I can just start tillering it then. Well, no. One of the handy things that you can do, which will prevent you going wrong later on, when as far as roughing out goes, is actually marking a centre line down the belly, down the top of the belly, if you like, which will help you when you're roughing out, getting even, when you're roughing out either side of the bow, when you're taking the corners off. Now, a lot of people, when they show us bows that they've made that have gone wrong, they're so uneven from one side to the other, because quite naturally when you work with tools, because us frail humans that we are, as my back problem would suggest, we tend to lean one way or the other, or one hand is stronger or your one arm is stronger than the other. So a lot of the time when you're working on things, you'll find that it becomes uneven. So it's one handy way of making sure that it isn't uneven. I'll see if I can move the camera without it all collapsing, so you can see exactly what it is that I'm doing. So yeah, marking out. This is the top of the bow, the top of the belly section. So I say we've already got the handle sections marked out here. If I go around this way, you might get a bit more light on it. And there we go. So yeah, if you just use a simple measuring tool, this is my favourite one. It's my like that, it's a little yo-yo one like that. So yeah, we're just going to measure down where the centre is and just make some marks. And you just do that all the way down the stave, all the way down, and then just simply with the pencil mark that line on there. And that way, at least you've got some sort of guide when you actually then do the roughing out. Because as I mentioned, when you're roughing out, there is a tendency to take off more wood one side than the other. And as I say, this sort of discrepancy means that when you've finished roughing it out, you quite often have got more meat on one side of the bow than the other. It isn't always visible to the naked eye, but what it can mean is when you then go to tiller, you end up with a twist in the bow. That's one benefit of putting this line down there. And also you don't fret quite as much about, oh, am I taking off one way or the other? So keeping that line down, so I will work now till that line remains the only thing that's proud, the only thing that's on the top of this stave. So one simple and effective method of using a pencil. I've already lost that one that I had already. See that? Where do they go? Oh, there it is. There must be some sort of... My dad's always had this theory that there's a black hole somewhere where pencils and tools in general go in workshops, and they must just all end up somewhere. I'm sure Douglas Adams had this same theory about biros, as some biroid life form planet somewhere where all this stuff ends up bloody going. Anyway, so that's one handy thing with a pencil, and a type of measuring out that isn't always mentioned in all the books and not everyone tends to do, but can have far-reaching implications of when you do work later on the bow. Now, another thing that you can do with the humble pencil and measuring out is, of course, as I mentioned, on your tiller. Now, I don't actually use marks on my tiller. I haven't got lines on the wall. Now, you can use simple parallel lines that just go along the wall. Some people use a grid system. When I was taught to make bows and arrows, I used lines, just horizontal lines, about 3-inch measurements between the lines, going from top to bottom. Now, those really help when you're starting out, understanding what a bow should look like is quite a difficult thing to teach, but having lines on there at least allows you to get an even bend between the limbs. Now, that isn't always helpful when particularly making a Victorian bow, where the handle section is of course slightly off centre, so the meat of the bow, which means that you end up with a riser section or a section of the bow that doesn't bend. So two independently working limbs means that one of them is going to be longer than the other. In this case, with the Victorian longbow, the top limb ends up being longer and will actually need to be therefore a slightly different shape than the bottom limb. Certainly as far as length is concerned. So using a grid system or lines on the wall can sometimes be deceiving when you're trying to do that. It's more useful, say, with a medieval style of bow or bows where limbs are meant to be even, because obviously you can see any discrepancy between the limbs when using that grid system or lines. So be aware that it can slightly throw you off if you're trying to make one of the limbs a slightly different shape to the other. I think that's pretty much all I was going to say. I was just going to make this a short one, really. Do not underestimate measuring out, both you at home and you on YouTube. And yeah, the humble pencil is one of the most important tools that you can have, and do as much as you can with it prior to starting work on the bow, because you can't alter it afterwards. Okay? Right, thanks for watching, and thanks for you at YouTube, and thanks for you on Facebook. If you'd like to join us on either one, then please do. And subscribe and like and all that other jazz. Take care, folks, and nice to see you all, and yeah, have fun. Pencils, they're good.